Welcome back to Educator.com's English Grammar course. This lesson is on subject-verb agreement. Let's get started. All right, we're going to begin with an overview. We're going to talk about basic subject-verb agreement, how to make your subjects and verbs agree when you have single subjects and when you have compound subjects. We're going to talk about a couple of distractions that can make subject-verb agreement more complicated or make it seem more complicated. Interrupters and inverted sentences. We're going to look at how to identify those and how to ignore them. And then we're going to look at some tricky subjects that can get in the way of proper subject-verb agreement. We'll look at how to handle collective nouns. We'll look at how to handle titles, phrases, and singular plurals. Oh my gosh, what are those? We'll get to it. And we're going to look at how to handle indefinite pronouns and relative pronouns. And we're going to remind you of what those things are, never fear. All right, basic subject-verb agreement. In English, subjects and verbs must agree in number and in person. Now remember, number is whether it's singular or plural. Are you talking about one thing or many things? And person, first person, I, me. Second person, you. Third person, he, she, it, they. So, verbs change form according to number and person, sometimes, and so they have to agree with their subject, whatever it is. With a single subject, one word, the rule is simple. You match the verb to the subject, whether it's singular or plural. So, for example, the oil needs to be changed. Oil is the subject, it's singular, and the verb is needs, because that's the third person singular form of the verb to need. But the tires need to be rotated. That's the third person plural form of the verb to need. Seems pretty simple, right? Compound subjects are more complicated. First of all, if the subjects, singular or plural, are joined by the conjunction and, the verb is plural. The president and his cabinet members are, plural verb, on vacation this week. We have two different subjects joined by the conjunction and, so we use the plural verb are. Unless the parts refer to the same thing or work as a unit. The classic example of this is macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is my specialty. Now, if you said macaroni and cheese are my specialty, then you would be saying macaroni is my specialty and cheese is my specialty. Well, maybe if you're both a pasta maker and a dairyman, that would make sense, but for most people, when you say macaroni and cheese, you're talking about one single gloppy, glorious mess of pasta and cheese mixed together in your bowl. Particularly in American English, we say this almost as one word, macaroni and cheese. They're never separated. So we treat it as singular and we use the singular verb is. There's also an exception if the compound subject is preceded by each or every, which means that each or every example of this whatever it is being treated individually, so it gets a singular verb. Every boy and girl loves to learn. Every boy loves to learn and every girl loves to learn. Now, second rule, if your compound subject, your two or more subjects, are joined by or nor, the verb should agree with the subject that's closest to the verb. Neither the president nor his cabinet members are in Washington this week. Cabinet members is what's closest to the verb, so we get the plural verb are. But if you reverse that order, neither the cabinet members nor the president is in Washington this week. Well, president is what's closest, so we get the singular verb is. It's all about proximity. All right. Underline the subject in each of these sentences and circle the correct verb to complete each. Neither Bob nor Rob admit or admits to starting the rumor. Either Santa or his elves check or checks the list twice. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And here we are. Neither Bob nor Rob admits to starting the rumor. Well, we have our or nor, and Rob is what's closest to the verb. Rob is singular, so Rob admits. Either Santa or his elves check the list twice. Well, in this case, elves is what's closest to the verb, so we use the plural verb check. All right. Obviously, subject-verb agreement is all about identifying the subject, identifying the verb, and making sure that they make sense together. Now, while you're doing that, there are a couple of things that may distract you. These are things to watch out for. The first is interrupters. Prepositional phrases and modifiers of all kinds that come between the subject and the verb. If you find them, ignore them. They are not relevant to subject-verb agreement. So, Carlos, in fact, is my best friend. You could just as easily take out in fact and say Carlos is my best friend. The subject and verb agree. Carlos, who is my older brother, is my best friend. Here you have an entire clause interrupting the subject and verb, but the subject and verb, Carlos and is, are all that matter. Now the second thing that can distract you is an inverted sentence. We talked about these a little bit when we talked about sentence types and about subjects and predicates. Inverted sentences are sentences where the subject follows the verb. These may include questions, there is, there are statements, and sentences where the order of subject and verb is reversed for effect. Don't be fooled by these. Look for the actual subject and the actual verb. So, who are you? You is the subject, are is the verb. You have to make sure that they agree. You can't say, who is you? There is no doubt in my mind. Doubt is the subject, and is the verb. You can't say, there are no doubt in my mind. Long are the dog days of summer. Days is the subject, it's plural, so you use the plural verb are, even though the order of the sentence is inverted for dramatic effect. All right, some types of subjects can be especially problematic. First of all, collective nouns or group nouns, which we covered briefly in our lesson on nouns. They identify a single entity that is composed of multiple units, something like class, or team, or faculty, family, series, choir, crowd, etc. Each of these things is a group made up of roughly equivalent units. When these groups act as one unit, they take a singular noun. So we say a majority is needed to pass the bill. Majority is made up of, in this case, a number of lawmakers, individuals, but they're acting as a group, a majority. So a majority is needed. The committee, a group of people acting as one, probably, meets Friday at noon. Now, there's an exception to the exception. If the context of the sentence emphasizes the individual members of the group, or there are multiple groups, collective nouns are plural. So in this case, a majority of students, we're emphasizing the students, so a majority of students feel unsafe at school. We're talking about how many individual students feel this way, not about a majority of students as a group feels unsafe. The group itself does not have feelings, only individuals do. Or the committees, well, here we have a group of groups, well, they meet. You use the plural verb, Friday at noon. All right, if the subject is a title, a specified phrase, or a gerund phrase, it is singular. It doesn't matter what's actually in that title or specified phrase. So, classic example, The Birds is my favorite movie. Well, normally birds would be a plural noun, but The Birds is the title of a famous movie directed by Alfred Hitchcock, so you treat it as one thing. The Birds is my favorite movie. Once upon a time, a specified phrase, is how fairy tales begin. Once again, we're using once upon a time as a single unit, a quoted phrase, so it uses a singular verb. And delivering pizzas, a single activity, is how I pay my bills. It's a gerund, it's one activity, so we treat it as singular. All right, some words, just because this isn't hard enough, are plural in form, but function as singular entities. They look like they should be plural, but we really don't have a use for the singular. These include the names of academic subjects like economics, and a few other words like news. You also have to watch out for foreign words and medical terms, because they may appear plural because they end in S, even though they're actually singular. Let's look at some examples. Physics is my favorite subject. Your clue here is you almost never hear anyone say physic, singular. We haven't used physic as a singular noun since, about the 16th or 17th century. No news is good news. Well, you wouldn't say no new is good new. It's always plural, so we treat it as singular. It's actually a non-count noun. You can't break it down into individual parts. You just say lots of news. And the diagnosis, which is actually singular, you'll notice the is ending, which in Greek means singular, is, singular verb, grim. Now, for foreign words, you're just going to have to learn when they're singular and when they're plural. That's a memorization thing. Unfortunately, English can't stop stealing words from other languages. Physics and other academic subjects, again, listen to them in context. Ditto for news. This is one of those things where you're just going to have to read and listen as much as you can in English. Now, when one of these plural-looking words actually describes individual items, however, the verb goes back to being plural. So, statistics is an academic subject. You can usually use it as a singular verb, as I just did. Statistics is an academic subject. But in this case, these statistics show strong growth in the third quarter. In this case, we're talking about multiple statistics. One statistic, two statistics. All together, they show. So we use the plural verb show. All right. Now we come to indefinite pronouns, which we covered in some detail in our lesson on pronouns, but we're going to look at again here. Indefinite pronouns are those that don't refer to or replace a specific person, place, or thing. Most of them are third-person singular subjects. So anybody, anyone, anything, everybody, everyone, everything, nobody, no one, nothing, somebody, someone, something, each, either, and neither. Pay particular attention to the any's, the every's, the no's, and the some's. They are, as a rule, third-person singular. Let's take a look at this. Has everyone seen this movie? Third-person singular, seen. Nothing is happening. Third-person singular, is. Third-person singular, has as well. If anybody has something to say, now is the time to say it. Now, not all indefinite pronouns are always third-person singular. Both, few, many, and several, which you'll notice refer to groups, are always, always, always plural. Many of us agree with you, plural verb. However, they can sometimes function as adjectives, so watch to see if they're followed by a noun or a pronoun or a prepositional phrase that they modify. So, many a day, okay, has gone by since I saw you last. Well, the subject here is day, and so the verb, singular, has gone. Okay, all, my, none, and some can be singular or plural depending on what they are replacing. Now remember, pronouns, their whole job is to take the place of a noun. So, in this case, none of the money is left. Well, none is taking the place of money. Money is what we call a non-count noun. It doesn't have both singular and plural forms. It's just this kind of substance. You don't say one money, two monies, three monies. It doesn't make any sense. You just say some money, more money, lots of money. So in this case, none of the money is left. It's a non-count noun, and you treat it like it's singular. However, none of the jewels, none is taking the place of jewels, are real. Jewels is a count noun. You can say one jewel, two jewels, three jewels. So you use the plural verb are. Okay, relative pronouns like who, that, and which often introduce subordinate clauses, which means they are the subject of those clauses. Remember, a clause is something that has a subject and a verb. Once again, the antecedent, oh, that's a big grammar word. It means the word that the pronoun or whatever it is replacing. It means the thing that came immediately before. Determines whether it is singular or plural. So look to see what the relative pronoun is replacing, and that'll tell you whether the verb should be singular or plural. So, this is a story that gets wilder with each telling. That, in this case, is replacing story. Story is singular, so you use the singular verb gets. These are stories that get wilder with each telling. Well, in this case, that is replacing stories, plural, so we use the plural verb get. All right, see if you can choose the correct verb for each of these sentences to make sure that the subject and the verb agree. Every problem and setback is or are an opportunity. A house without a good foundation is or are sure to crumble. How many times have or has I asked you to stop? Wise is or are the quiet tongue and the open heart. Take a good look. Pause the video if you need to. And here we are. Every problem and setback is an opportunity. Your clue here was the word every. You have a compound subject, problem and setback, but they're preceded by every. Remember, every boy and girl loves to learn. The every is there, so we use the singular verb is. A house without a good foundation is sure to crumble. Without a good foundation is a prepositional phrase. It's an interrupter. You can basically ignore it. House is. Subject, verb. Single subject, single verb. How many times have I asked you to stop? Now, this is an inverted sentence because it's a question. So, the verb is have, the subject is I, so we use the singular verb have. I have. Wise are the quiet tongue and the open heart. This is another inverted sentence, in this case inverted for effect. We have a compound subject, tongue, and heart, so we use the compound verb are. All right, take a look at these and see if you can find the correct verb. The audience is or are in for a real surprise in Act 2. Many classes is or are overcrowded this semester. Porgy and Bess is are my favorite musical. Nothing has changed since you were last here. Take a good look, pause the video if you need to. And here we are. The audience is in for a real surprise in Act 2. Audience is a collective noun, a group noun. It refers to a group of people, but they're acting as a unit, so the audience is in for a real surprise. Many classes are overcrowded. Well, class is another collective noun, but you're talking about multiple collective nouns, multiple classes. So you use the plural verb are. Porgy and Bess is my favorite musical. Well, you might look and say, well, there's Porgy, there's Bess. It must be a compound subject, so we should use a plural verb. You'd be wrong. Porgy and Bess, your clue here was musical. Porgy and Bess, which is also italicized, is the title of a musical. It's one thing, like The Birds. So you use the plural verb is. The singular verb is. Nothing has changed since you were last here. Your clue here was the word nothing, which always takes a third person singular. So we use the third person singular has. All right, last round of practice. Choose the correct verb for each sentence. Each of the band members have or has a solo in this song. Freud's case studies, which often read or reads more like novels than medical tracts, are fascinating. And Frankenstein, which most critics agree is or are the first science fiction novel, was written by Mary Shelley, who is or was just 19 at the time. Take a good look, pause the video if you need to, find the subject and the correct verb. All right, each of the band members has a solo in this song. Well, we have an interrupter in the prepositional phrase band members, and we note that each is here. So it takes the third person singular verb has. Freud's case studies, which often read, our verb is read, but our subject is which is a relative pronoun, and in this case, it's taking the place of the word studies. Well, studies is of course plural, so we use the plural verb read, which read more like novels than medical tracts, are fascinating. Frankenstein, which most critics agree is the first science fiction novel, well, there's our which again, and in this case, it's taking the place of Frankenstein, which is, first of all, a singular noun, and second of all, a title, so we treat it as a single thing. Which is. It gets the singular verb is. It was written by Mary Shelley, who, which is taking the place of Mary Shelley, and there's only one of her, and she was just 19 when she wrote Frankenstein. Once again, third person singular verb, there's only one Mary Shelley. That's all for this lesson. Thank you for watching Educator.com.